Let's face it, 2020 has been a bit shoddy. 12 shoddy months of rampant uncertainty and endless crisis, but we've survived, enjoying free, count them, Star Trek shows as much needed escapism. Never in the 60-year history of this franchise have we enjoyed such output. Thank you, Star Trek. We really needed it this year. In this video, I'm looking back at the Star Trek we got over the course of 2020, singing the praises of 5 episodes worthy of a song in Stovercore, and ripping on another 5 that I'd readily trade for a bag of self-sealing stem bolts. Probably. There may be spoilers from here on out, as I am pretty hopeless at not divulging spoilers as I talk, so take that as your warning. Also try to remember that everything presented in this video is merely the opinion of one, me, TrekLad, a humble Trek fan. Don't take it as Surak's divine teachings. If you have a different opinion and wish to express it, please do so in the comments below, and if I think it's a good comment, I might even respond. But if you needed to hear this to prevent some sort of gatekeepery spiel that you're going to tell me that I don't deserve Star Trek, consider running a level 3 diagnostic. I mean, Picard would probably hate you. My name is Michael, aka the TrekLad, and this is the best and worst of Star Trek in 2020. Engage! World building. Well, at least they tried. Picard tried a lot of things actually, but more on that later. Absolute Candor tries to show us the aftermath of that Romulan supernova and how it affected the civilization, but like a lot of Trek that we've seen in the past, it does so through a hilariously small scope. On Vashti, literally every Romulan who isn't a warrior nun seems to hold a massive grudge against Picard. Surely, the man who went insane lengths to assemble and lead a rescue armada to save your entire race would enjoy a warmer welcome than this. And let's be honest, Picard doesn't exactly help the situation. His reaction is quite frankly bizarre. Once known for his impeccable diplomacy, Picard just decides to antagonize the situation, further fanning the flame of Romulan xenophobia. Honestly, if I was indifferent on Vashti at the time and I witnessed this, I'd probably think this dude was a complete dick. Way to go, JL. Absolute Candor's centerpiece, however, is the introduction of the show's newest regular, Elnor, a sexy space elf whose total lack of character is more than made up for by his shocking readiness to slice and dice his fellow Romulan. You know, thinking about it, I'm not actually surprised Picard conveniently forgot about this chap. Remembrance, an episode that by the end of Picard is something I look back on like a treasured childhood memory. Maintaining Star Trek's first episode is good tradition. Picard's first episode was pretty darn good. Sure, it followed the contemporary Trek trope of just throwing endless mystery at us, and yes, it was nostalgia bait to the point of nerdgasm, but there was a lot of promise here nonetheless. Patrick Stewart's initial appearance as a weather-worn Picard, despondent with the state of Starfleet, made a lot of sense. This was a more emotional and less patient take on the iconic character, and that was totally fine with me. The things we see Picard go through in Remembrance more than justify his attitude, and let's be real, as we get older, we do usually lose some sort of form, so Picard being a little less off form, a little bit more vulnerable and emotional, it just makes total sense. The vision of the future presented here is also pretty neat. Post-Nemesis Earth is thankfully still pretty swanky, with the visuals striking a fine balance between the Earth that we've seen before, kind of mixed in with a little bit of that beautiful, shiny, lens flare-y Earth that we'd seen in JJ's Kelvin Universe movies too. Modern Trek TV productions do come with that movie-grade production values, so this was sort of assumed. What I'm trying to get at here is our future home still looked pretty Trek on the surface. Remembrance was a decent reintroduction to a forward-thinking Trek universe, and yes, that probably resulted in me going a little easy on it somewhat. The show had a platform to build upon. It's just a shame that it went the way it did. Now look, The Sanctuary isn't a disaster by any means. It's a forgettable episode that does just enough to further the season's main arc. Job done, in that regard. What I didn't like about this episode, however, was a weak-ass villain, a lame guest character, and the show's return to an old formula of super fast action that looks a little bit more Star Wars than Star Trek. Touted as the season's big bad, the Emerald Chain's Asira's first on-screen appearance sees her feed her prat of a nephew to a transworm for no other reason just to establish herself as being mean. From here, she goes on to a big confrontation with the Discovery, somehow looking completely different to how she looked in her earlier scene. What is that chin? Oh my word. She then carpet bombs some woods. They were supposed to be growing some crops here. I don't know. It looks a bit dead to me. Why didn't they just show her bombing some farmyards or stop overthinking this TrekLad? Her ship looks kind of dangerous, but we don't really see enough of it to know for sure. Another Discovery trope, but it doesn't really matter as she and the ship are quickly neutralised by Detmer, who decides to go all Han Solo in Book's really tiny ship. Was I supposed to take this villain seriously? Because I didn't. I'm still holding out hope that Asira and the Emerald Chain are some sort of decoy for the season's ultimate baddie. But if not, if this really is it, I have very little reason to fear this character, aside from a chin that could probably put me on my ass. Like I said, not terrible, just not great. The only thing I'll remember the Sanctuary for in time is an ineffective, villainous introduction and visuals that gave me a bit of a headache. Arguably Star Trek Discovery's best use of Trek-rich lore to date. Leaning heavily on what we learned about the Trill from Star Trek The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, Forget Me Not is a wonderful merging of old and new with a timeless love story and its perfectly tuned heart, or warp core, if you prefer Trek lingo. From the get-go, Adira was a character that I wanted to learn more about, a feeling only heightened by the revelation of their impossible joining. Blue DeBarrow nails their part. A prodigious talent, struggling to understand their own self and struggling to deal with past traumas. The revelation of their relationship with Tau's former host, Gray, could have been stretched over more than just a single exposition dump of a scene, especially considering the extended runtime of the episode, but the two characters in just a handful of scenes brought warmth and legitimate emotional heft the show has lacked in the past. Adira, as well as Gray, played by fellow franchise newcomer Ian Alexander, have been frustratingly left on the sidelines for the most part since this episode aired. I really hope this is something the show corrects as we head towards the season's conclusion. While there's still time for things to be picked up, Terra Firma did rob the third season of Discovery of some much needed momentum. All for a trip to an overly cooked universe and an unwelcome return to the show's old habits, a penchant for grim grisly violence, and yes, very conversely, lots and lots of melodrama. Real talk, Mira Georgiou is one of the most unlikable characters in Trek history. But that's supposed to be the point. Not only is she Mirror Universe material, she's the ruler of the whole fucking thing. A genocidal tyrant with a taste for the show's best addition to Trek canon, Georgiou should be beyond saving, but the show's insistence on trying to redeem her and giving her an emotional farewell and potentially her own show to lead, it just didn't sit well with me. Equally ill-sitting personally was the nostalgia bait use of the Guardian of Forever. Now I get Discovery's want to tie into classic elements to strengthen its own place in the franchise, but the Guardian's inclusion here just felt forced, as if to serve as a winking affirmation that the show's writers and showrunners do in fact understand Star Trek. Originality is something Discovery sorely lacks, and for me this was another wasted opportunity for the show to just do and add something new. And I don't understand how it was such a surprise either. I mean, how it was so obvious. It was so obvious it was the Guardian. I mean, am I really the only person that lives on Memory Alpha? boy did Lower Decks get good. Still on the fence about it? Honestly, give it time, you are in for a treat. Personally, I was thoroughly enjoying the show long before this late season 1 episode. Light, taut, and packing in so much character work over the course of 10 30-minute episodes. It might be a little light on last for some, especially in the show's earlier, more nervous outings, but it's definitely big on love from its clearly knowledgeable team of writers. And that's probably most obvious here, with the show acting as a massive love letter to the big brilliance of the Star Trek cinematic universe. Trek movies and movies in general will always be my first love, so I was probably always going to be a little biased here. But even when I try and Colin-R those emotions out of me for a second and look at this episode objectively, Crisis Point remains extremely impressive. This episode packs in so much stuff, and all of it sticks the landing. From the countless winks, nods, flavours and feels from classic Trek movies, I will literally never tire of the Cerritos ship porn, to Mariner's incredibly effective and very Trek-esque character study that plays out in mere minutes. This episode is an absolute disruptor blast of fun. Oh, and it even has Da Vinci in it. No, not that one. The one from the Voyager episodes. These writers just get it. Oh man. When Picard was first announced, it was promised as a quieter, smaller scale thriller with an emphasis on character and story over action. Personally, I was pleased. I was hoping for some variants from other Trek shows at the time that just weren't doing it for me. But unless the definition of the words quieter, smaller, thriller, character and story changed while I was asleep, they lied to me. They lied to all of us. Ignoring the pretentious drivel of the two-parter's title, which loosely translates as "Even in Utopia there is death." Look, I know Star Trek has a long history of silly titles, but this one just stands out as one of the worst. Picard's first season finale was a complete disappointment, a conceptual betrayal that we should have known was coming from the onset. End of the world stakes? Check. Overly emotional? Yep. More questions than answers? Maybe. Now this fit into the mould of modern Star Trek TV storytelling. We'd seen these tropes in both of the previous Star Trek Discovery season finales at the time, but this was Picard. I was hoping for more. This was our dear JL. Look, there's so much I don't like about this, and perhaps one day I'll better vocalise the reasons why I struggled so much. But for now, here's a brain fart list of all of the stuff that I just couldn't get on with. Borg cube crashes but remains perfectly intact. Do you remember that episode of TNG when they find Hugh in all the wreckage of that Borg cube? That Borg ship was in pieces. Yet another Soon brother that we never knew about turns up and starts talking about a golem that he intends to use to prolong his life. That space wand that fixes whatever you want it to fix. Androids can now be killed like regular humans. Soji campaigns for android rights and turns on the entire universe days after learning she is one herself. Picard doesn't know how to fly anymore. Until he does. Copy and paste Romulan fleet. Copy and paste Starfleet fleet. Acting Captain Riker. Now look, I'm not mad, but why acting captain? Why would someone who until a day ago was at home cooking pizza suddenly be promoted to heading up the most advanced line of ships in the fleet? Soji being brought to her senses by Picard just at the right time. Commodore O, despite being on a lifelong mission, a mission that she believes will save the entire universe, just leaving with her fleet because Riker told her so. She's a Romulan, so surely she'll just go back to the planet and destroy it as soon as the coast is clear, right? Why would she so readily abandon the cause her entire life has been based upon until that point? With the mission complete and the universe saved, Picard at that moment decides to succumb to his illness, only to be brought back in the very next scene. Into Darkness, Kirk says, hey, I would soon be cool with Picard using the golem. Didn't he literally mention wanting to use it for himself? Why is he okay with this? Why is there no conflict stemming from this? Why did everyone assume Picard would be cool with the golem being handicapped to match his body's age and abilities? We could have had Iron Man Picard here. Why did they have to redo Data's death? He had the perfect death in Nemesis, the culmination of his lifelong mission to be more human. You don't get more human than that. Why did we get this? This just depressed me. Whatever happened? I'll give you this. Isa Briones' rendition of Blue Skies is absolutely beautiful, but even that could have been used in a better and more meaningful way. Honestly, I'm not a hater. I think it's important to recognise and vocalise what you don't like, as well as celebrating what you do, and I just didn't like this. I didn't like most of Picard's first run. I honestly just think it could have been done so much better. To date, the best episode of Discovery's entire run. Try Trying is the culmination of the third season's establishment of the new future the show now resides in, and yeah, it totally lived up to expectations. This raised the bar for the rest of the season, for better or worse. I loved the early scenes showing Discovery's arrival at the new base. The crew watching wide-eyed as the ship slowly made its way past just countless evolved ship designs. I loved the winks and nods to legends of Trek lore. Discovery has never done subtlety this well. I loved Admiral Vance and his perfectly understandable disbelief regarding the new ship that now sits in his space garage, and yet showing a willingness to trust and enable. A character in the greatest keepings of classic Trek mentality. Away from the exciting new hub of tech delights, I also thoroughly enjoyed Burnham taking charge of this episode's side quest. It was a joy to see Burnham's slick command of a well-oiled Discovery crew, and honestly, it reminded me a lot of the show's very first episode, and the way I felt that show succeeded in briefly depicting a professional crew working together in space. I love the show's resolution. Yeah, sure, I know, the emotion is laid on thick once again, but it just worked here. Now, I know the password reveal got some stick, but honestly, I loved it. This is emo Trek done just right. You're damn right I'd name my daughters after some alien moons. Try Trying felt like a homecoming. It felt like the completion of a reset and repositioning the show really needed. We now know what Discovery is truly capable. I just hope we get more episodes like this, and maybe less terra firma. Star Trek is like my family. I look at this franchise and all of its near 800 episodes and 13 movies as you would a brother or a mother, a father, aunt, grandmother. A familial array of content of varying levels of quality that I always look at in different ways. If we're to use that analogy, I look at Picard's Stardust City Rag as that horrible dickhead cousin that's constantly in and out of prison. I don't have a cousin like that, by the way, and I'm not saying you do. I'm just trying to illustrate how intensely I dislike this episode. What a shit show. This episode pushed me to the limit. It's a bleak, joyless, soulless trudge through the swine of the Star Trek universe. Do nasty things exist in this universe? Yeah, without a doubt. Do I want to see them? Honestly, it depends. Deep Space Nine did a great job with darker content, as have other shows from time to time. It's about how you tell the story. Kirsten Beyer can write. There's no doubting that. She can write a whole lot better than me. She has books and everything. I mean, the best I've ever done is a pamphlet and a website no one's ever been to. But her writing here is appalling. Tonally dissonant from start to finish. Almost every character acts wildly off base. It's littered with overly worked dialogue that at times just feels like a bad episode of a bad soap. All the while insistent on telling us stuff rather than actually showing. Surprisingly, the gory Icheb death scene isn't my least favourite part. It's still shit, and it's still pretty nonsensical from a medical point of view. Why not just put him to sleep? Surely it would be easier to extract all that Borg crap without the endless screaming and constant movement on the table. Yeah. Nah. Now, Jerry Ryan does pour it on with a committed performance that elevates the scene somewhat. Jerry Ryan has a tendency to do that and work great with bad material. But my biggest issue here was the scene's complete and utter failure to properly place our anger in the direction of the episode's antagonist. Just shouting the name of the baddie is not enough. We need more. We need reasons to hate this character, so that when she dies, that really horrible death, it's justified, it feels right. Didn't get that here. Patrick Stewart embarrasses himself with quite possibly the worst French impression ever. I honestly thought he was just joking when he did that bit earlier on. But no, when he goes down to the planet's surface, he actually uses it. He actually uses this impression. What is this show? Also, let's talk about the complete lack of recognition for someone who should be the most famous human in the entire quadrant. You mean to say that you can go unnoticed in this future with just an eye patch as a disguise? This is Star Trek. This is not Scooby-Doo. Why did the show need to spend so long with Raffi and her son, whose name I can't remember? Why the need for such drama that barely gets another mention in the series? Why does everything in this show seek to depress me? This is grim. It's cold, it's depressing, it's full of violence. Now, I'm not against a darker take on the Star Trek universe. We've seen it before, like I've said. It's just in the past, the light of a brighter future still found a way to shine through. Like a ray of sunshine threatening to break a thick blanket of rain cloud. You know it's there, because every once in a while, you can feel it on your skin. I didn't experience that here. Just layers upon layers of endless black smog. Like Nagilum, just he never let the Enterprise go.
Oh yes! I hate this! It is revolting!
More?
Please.
No Small Parts is special. Not only for what it achieves in such a short space of time, not just for the fact that its moments of heavy nostalgia actually work and feel earned, but for the simple fact that it wraps everything up, like really well. Literally everything from 10 solid weeks of story, everything had a payoff. Almost all of our characters enjoyed some sort of resolution to their season arc. It's like this episode was the series finale, rather than just the final episode in a season. And that balance of comedy and more dramatic moments, absolutely perfect. Now, I'd been waiting to see a side that Mike McMain had learnt something from his time spent on Rick and Morty. That show's ability to deftly handle dramatic elements with really silly comedy. And that absolutely shone through here. This episode gave me some of the biggest belly laughs of the season. It made me jump for joy at the triumphant arrival of Captain Riker, Deanna Troi, and the Titan, an event that was actually referenced earlier in the episode. Payoff, and also got me thinking with musings and clever dialogue regarding Starfleet and the Federation's galactic assumptions. Sheer fucking hubris, to steal a phrase. It also achieved something none of its contemporaries have succeeded in doing thus far. It made me cry. It made me emotional. All over the heroic actions and death of a character that we'd had on our screen for a combined 8 minutes total. And I had to round that number up. No Small Parts was the perfect title for one of the best finales in Star Trek history. 23 minutes of sheer Star Trek bliss that perfectly capped off one hell of a start for a show that some wrote off because it didn't have real people in it. This is how you build characters to genuinely care for, while doing something new, pushing boundaries, and yet still respecting the rich universe that it inhabits. And there you have it. There are my 5 best and worst episodes of Star Trek in 2020. Yes, I moaned a lot, but I do feel like I matched it in equal parts with love. For the most part, it's just wonderful to have Star Trek back and playing such a big part in our lives again. For better or for worse, Star Trek was huge for me in 2020, and for that I will always be grateful. So thanks, Alex. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Michael and Mike. That's a lot of Mike variations in there. Thanks to everyone on screen, off screen, and in between. Thanks Gene for being mad enough to dream all this up. And most importantly, thank you for putting up with me over the last 6 months and giving me the confidence and the freedom to feel like I can make these videos. I really appreciate it. What did you think of Star Trek in 2020? What were your highlights? What were your lowlights? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content coming at you warp speed in 2021. Until next time, stay safe and live long and prosper.